You won't believe what happened when Karen decided to build a garage right on my lakeside lot without asking me at all. It started as a quiet summer afternoon, just me enjoying the peace by the water, when I noticed something unusual there. Right at the edge of my property, a big structure was going up fast. At first, I thought maybe it was just some temporary storage or a small shed. But no, Karen was building a full garage, and it was clear she had no permission. This wasn't just a small mistake. It was a major boundary issue that quickly turned into a huge problem. Karen, the classic entitled neighbor, had always acted like the neighborhood was her personal kingdom, but this crossed a line. She didn't even bother to talk to me before starting the construction. I tried to stay calm and reason with her, but Karen's reaction was wild. She screamed and shouted like I was the villain for wanting the garage removed. It felt like the whole situation was spiraling out of control, and I didn't know how far she would go to keep that garage on my land. This story isn't just about property lines or a building dispute. It's about respect, boundaries, and what happens when someone feels entitled to more than what's theirs. The lakeside lot was supposed to be my private space, my escape, but suddenly it felt like a battlefield. I had to decide whether to stand my ground or let this slide. But with Karen's attitude, it wasn't going to be easy. What happened next shocked me. I thought things couldn't get worse, but Karen's reaction left me speechless, and it all unfolded right there by the lake. Stay tuned, because this isn't over yet, and the next part will reveal just how intense this Karen saga really gets. Before all this happened, Karen and I had a history of small disagreements, but nothing this serious. She's always been the kind of neighbor who wants things her way, and I've learned to keep my distance most of the time. But this garage situation felt different. It wasn't just about her being pushy or loud. This was about her crossing a clear line that wasn't hers to cross. My lakeside lot has always been my peaceful retreat, a place where I can unwind and enjoy nature without worrying about drama. So seeing that big, imposing garage pop up right on my property felt like an invasion. I decided to dig deeper and find out how Karen managed to get away with building something so massive without any permits or approvals. Turns out she didn't file any paperwork, didn't notify me, and definitely didn't follow any of the local rules. It was like she thought she could just do whatever she wanted and no one could stop her. When I brought this up, she acted like I was being unreasonable, like I was trying to ruin her plans or make her life difficult. But this wasn't about me making things hard for her. It was about protecting what's rightfully mine. The tension between us grew day by day. I started talking to other neighbors, some of whom had seen Karen's construction going on and were surprised she didn't get stopped sooner. It seemed like Karen's reputation for being difficult was known, but no one expected her to go this far. Meanwhile, the garage was almost finished, and every time I looked out my window, felt more trapped in my own space. I knew I had to take action, but I wasn't sure how Karen would react next. Would she back down or escalate things even more? The whole neighborhood was starting to buzz about it, and I could feel eyes on me, waiting to see what I would do. The next move was mine, but the outcome was anything but certain. As the garage neared completion, the tension between Karen and me only grew thicker. Every morning, I'd wake up to the sight of that massive structure, looming over the shoreline where I used to watch the sun rise in peace. It wasn't just an eyesore, it felt like a constant reminder that my boundaries weren't being respected. I tried to approach Karen calmly one afternoon, hoping we could find some middle ground, but she was quick to shut me down. Her voice was sharp, filled with frustration and anger, accusing me of making a big deal out of nothing. That moment made it clear this wasn't going to be a simple neighborhood dispute. Meanwhile, other neighbors started taking sides without even realizing it. Some quietly sympathized with me, understanding how invasive it was to have someone build on your land without permission. Others, though, seemed to admire Karen's boldness, calling her determined or standing up for herself. That split added a new layer of awkwardness to the neighborhood, making social gatherings tense and uncomfortable. I found myself stuck in a complicated position, caught between defending my property and navigating the tricky dynamics of community opinions. Adding to the stress, I began researching local laws and HOA rules, trying to find the best way to handle the situation legally. It turned out Karen's garage violated several regulations, but enforcing those rules would mean going through long, frustrating processes that might drag on for months. The idea of involving the authorities felt exhausting, and I worried about how it would affect the already shaky relationship between us. On top of that, Karen's attitude made it clear she wasn't going to back down. Easily, she was prepared to fight for that garage no matter what. One evening, things took a surprising turn when Karen showed up at my door, visibly upset and yelling about how I was ruining her dreams. Her screams echoed down the quiet street, drawing attention from neighbors and making the whole situation feel even more intense. That confrontation left me wondering, how far was she willing to go? And was there any chance this conflict could ever be resolved peacefully? The answers were still out there, but for now, the struggle over that lakeside lot was far from over. As days passed, the situation grew more tense than I ever imagined. Karen's garage wasn't just a building anymore, it had become a symbol of everything wrong between us. Every time I stepped outside, I felt the weight of the conflict pressing down, like the walls of that garage were closing in on me. I started hearing whispers from neighbors, some warning me to be careful, others offering quiet support. It was like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Karen's behavior became more unpredictable. She began parking her car right in front of the garage, blocking my view of the lake, and sometimes left loud tools running late into the night. One afternoon, I found a nasty note taped to my door, accusing me of harassment and threatening to take things to court if I didn't back off. It was clear she was preparing for a battle she wasn't willing to lose. At the same time, I felt the pressure mounting. This wasn't just about a garage anymore. It was about standing up for what's mine, protecting my space, and refusing to be pushed around. I reached out to the local authorities and the HOA, hoping they could help put an end to the madness. But as I expected, their responses were slow and filled with bureaucracy. Karen, knowing this, seemed even bolder. She hosted a little gathering near the garage, inviting some neighbors and making a show of how proud she was of what she'd built. It felt like a direct challenge, a way to prove that she was in control. Then came the night that changed everything. I heard shouting outside, louder and more intense than before. When I looked out the window, Karen was there again, screaming and waving her arms, clearly furious over something. A crowd started to gather, and I realized this conflict was about to reach its breaking point. The calm I once had by the lake was gone, replaced by a storm I wasn't sure I could weather. What would happen next? The answer was coming, and it was going to be explosive. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, a new twist turned the whole situation upside down. The morning after that intense night, I woke up to find a large for sale sign planted right beside Karen's garage on my property. It wasn't just a simple sign either. It claimed that the lakeside lot, including the land where the garage sat, was part of the sale. I was stunned. Karen was trying to sell part of my land, using the garage as a selling point, acting like she owned it outright. It was unbelievably and, honestly, felt like a new kind of betrayal. I rushed to confront her, but Karen was calm, almost smug. She said she believed the lot was partly hers based on some old, blurry maps she claimed to have found. She insisted she had every right to build and even sell that land. I felt the walls closing in tighter. Now the conflict wasn't just about a garage. was about ownership, property lines, and something much bigger. This wasn't just a neighborly dispute anymore. It was turning into a full-blown legal mess. To make matters worse, a few neighbors started whispering that Karen might have some local officials quietly backing her up. Whether it was true or not, the rumor made the whole community uneasy. I realized I was up against more than just one determined neighbor. I was dealing with a tangled web of power, influence, and entitlement that threatened to swallow my peaceful lakeside retreat completely, with the for sale sign taunting me every time I looked outside. I knew I had to act fast. But Karen's confidence, the rumors, and the looming possibility of losing part of my property made every step forward feel heavier. The stakes were higher than ever, and the tension between us was about to reach a boiling point. What would happen next? That's the question no one in the neighborhood wanted to answer, but I had to face it head on. After days of gathering evidence, talking to the county office, and even consulting a property lawyer, I finally had the proof I needed. Karen's claim about owning part of my lakeside lot was completely baseless. The maps she showed were outdated and didn't reflect current property lines. The garage was clearly built on my land without permission, and the for sale sign was not just misleading, it was illegal. Armed with this information, I confronted Karen one last time, expecting a heated argument or even another outburst. But what happened next surprised me. Instead of denying everything, Karen suddenly admitted she never expected to get this far. She said she was desperate. Her own house was going through foreclosure, and building that garage was her way of trying to secure some financial ground. Her voice cracked as she confessed how much pressure she was under. And for a moment, I saw a side of her I hadn't before, a person struggling. Not just an entitled neighbor. Despite the tension and anger, I decided to take a different approach. I told her the garage had to come down, but I was willing to help her find other solutions, maybe rent space elsewhere, or work together to find a better way forward. She agreed, and together we contacted the HOA to start the removal process. It wasn't easy, and the garage took weeks to be taken down, but slowly peace began to return to my lakeside lot. Just when I thought the story was over, the final twist hit. A week after the garage was gone, I received a letter from a mysterious sender. Inside was a set of old documents. Turns out, there was a small, forgotten easement agreement signed decades ago that actually allowed a tiny portion of that land to be used for outbuildings. The catch: it wasn't clear if Karen knew about it, and it certainly didn't justify her whole garage. Now a new layer of complexity was added to the fight, and I realized this lakeside drama might not be finished yet. Finding those old easement documents was unexpected, and honestly, it complicated everything. I reached out to the HOA and a property expert to get clarity on what that meant for my lakeside lot and Karen's claim. After careful review, it turned out the easement only allowed a very small structure, nothing close to the size of the garage Karen had built, so legally, the garage was still out of line. While it didn't fully solve the dispute, it did open the door for more honest communication and compromise. Karen and I agreed to meet again, this time with the HOA present, to discuss what could work moving forward. We decided she could build a smaller, approved storage shed on a designated area far from the shoreline and definitely within legal boundaries. The process wasn't smooth, but it felt like a step toward rebuilding trust rather than tearing each other apart. Looking back, this whole experience taught me a lot about boundaries, communication, and how easily conflicts can escalate when people feel unheard or desperate. Karen's garage wasn't just about property lines, it was about pride, fear, and the struggle to protect what matters most. It reminded me that sometimes, beneath the loudest voices, there are stories we don't see at first glance. My lakeside lot is peaceful again now. The garage is gone, and the neighborhood feels a little calmer. Karen and I aren't exactly friends, but there's a mutual respect we didn't have before. I hope this story shows that standing up for your rights is important. But so is understanding where the other person is coming from, even when it's hard. Thanks for following along with this crazy Karen saga. If you've ever dealt with an entitled neighbor or a tricky property dispute, you know how messy things can get. Remember to stay calm, gather your facts, and don't give up on protecting your space. This lakeside drama might have ended for now, but the lessons will stick with me for a long time.